Well, it's August the 16th once again, the 14th anniversary. 14th anniversary. Well, it's August the 16th once again. Rolls around every year, of course. And it's the 48th anniversary of Elvis's death. But here we are, still talking about him on YouTube, still buying and listening to the music. And hopefully in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a great film to watch. I'm talking about Baz Luhrmann's Epic, of course. A film that I'm cautiously optimistic about, but anyway, we'll see. What I want to do in this video is take a look back at what I think are 10 of the most important releases to have come out since Elvis died. Not necessarily my favorites, but ones which were, and in many cases still are, important releases. So back in 1977, it was pretty straightforward. If an album came out and you wanted to buy it, you just got the LP, you got the cassette, or you got someone to tape it for you, and then you just waited for the next one to come out. But, well, really ever since Elvis died, there's just been a bewildering array of new releases coming out all the time, sometimes two at once, or more in some cases, and you've really got to have deep pockets to keep up with everything. Now, for me, one of the first releases to come out after Elvis died that showed that RCA were thinking about the fans and not just producing compilations for the general public was this album here, A Legendary Performer Volume 3. Now, I bought this originally back in about 1980, a couple of years after it came out. Was it 78, this one? I think it was 78. And yeah, I love this one. And the reason why this one, I think, was aimed more towards the fans than the public is because, unlike volumes 1 and 2, it's mostly unreleased stuff. With volumes 1 and 2, I think they were trying to have their cake and eat it, as it were, producing greatest hits compilations with just the odd nugget, one or two unreleased songs per side to attract the hardcore fans. But Volume 3 was definitely aimed more at the collectors, well, at the hardcore fans, I think. One thing I will say about Legendary Performer Volume 3 is it was obvious at that point that RCA did not have many songs in the vault. They had lots of unreleased takes, of course, but not many new songs. The one new song on this album, sorry, there were two, weren't there? There was Danny and Britches. Hardly classics as well. So I think from that point on, we knew that we were not going to be getting too many new songs, and we would have to be content with outtakes. Then in 79, we got a couple of albums which were really quite unusual for the time, but they were kind of forerunners of a lot of albums that we've had since then. They were our Memories of Elvis albums. Again, I bought these not long after they came out, early 80s. I bought these, and I played these a lot as well back at that time, back then. And they were really my introduction to a lot of 1970s music. And I thought they were quite well done. They got rid of the orchestration that had been overdubbed after the basic tracks were recorded, and they did their best to reduce the volume of the backing singers, which they couldn't get rid of completely because they were there recording with Elvis at the time. If they wanted a really pure Elvis set of songs, what they could have done back then, they could have actually used songs from the Nashville Marathon, because that was one of the few occasions in the 1970s when the backing singers were not there with Elvis. So they wouldn't have had to worry about the sound of the backing vocalists, because they were overdubbed later. I think Charlie was there, but there was no backing vocal group. So yeah, so that's that. Keep going. Keep waffling on. We're going to fade out there. For me, the next important release came the very next year in 1980. The superb Elvis Aaron Presley box set, 8 LP box set. Now that reminds me, actually, if you were following the Elvis Forum channel with myself and Adam and Steve and Johnny, you may have noticed that it's disappeared. Well, it's not disappeared, it's just sort of migrated, if that's the right word. If you are a subscriber to Adam's channel, which was called Elvis Presley Collectors Group, I believe, then you will automatically be subscribed to our new forum. So the Elvis forum is now called Elvis Now and Then. If you were not subscribed to Adam's channel, the Elvis Presley Collectors Group, then you will need to subscribe to Elvis Now and Then, if you want to, that is. But anyway, yeah, that's what happened to the forum, if you were wondering. It's now Elvis Now and Then. But anyway, back to the Elvis Aaron Presley box set. So I think that the bootleggers actually deserve a great deal of credit for this one. Just as politics is said to be downstream of culture, so RCA over the years has been downstream of the bootleggers. So before Elvis Aaron Presley came out, there was a 4 LP bootleg box set called Behind Closed Doors. And I think that showed RCA that there was a market for a big box set of Elvis music full of unreleased stuff. Basically outtakes and live recordings. And in fact, the guys who produced that set Behind Closed Doors, they approached Joan Deere at RCA, who was producing Elvis's records at the time. 1977, after Elvis died, the bootleggers went to RCA, saw Joan Deere, and they offered them the use of the cassette for the 1961 Hawaii Benefit concert. And Joan Deere, apparently she handed the cassette to an engineer who went away, came back later and said, nah, it doesn't sound very good. So Joan Deere told the bootleggers, no, we're not going to release it. Now I wonder if that RCA engineer, with Joan Deere's blessing, I wonder if he didn't make a cheeky little dub of that cassette, because sure enough, the Hawaii Benefit concert does appear on the 1980 Elvis Aaron Presley box set, of course, sounding pretty much exactly the same as it does on the bootleg LP. But nevertheless, that was a really important release from RCA. Mostly unreleased stuff as well, 8 LP box set. And incredibly, I remember that LP set getting into the LP charts in the UK. Now, at the time, I didn't have enough money to spend. I didn't have enough money to buy it outright, so I had to buy it through a mail order catalogue. It took me many weeks to pay for that box set, but it was worth every penny. Then through the 80s, we kind of plodded along with an LP here and an LP there. Meanwhile, the CDs came out in 1983-84, and a very important Elvis release came out in 1987 on LP and CD, and that was the Memphis Record. A lot of people refer to this as 1969 Year in Review, but that's not the title of the album. It's just the most prominent text on the cover, because it's done up like a newspaper front page. But the correct title, of course, is the Memphis Record. Now, when this came out, I wasn't really buying Elvis records at the time, and then I sold my collection around about 1991, I think it was, and this was the very first Elvis CD I bought. See, what happened is, after I sold my records, I started buying CDs slowly. And at the time, I kind of had this this philosophy of not listening to Elvis's music too much. It was so precious to me. I didn't want to play it unless I really wanted to hear it. And in fact, I'm still like that now. I won't just put an album on for the sake of it. I'll need to really want to hear that particular record or CD. So anyway, I went to a used record shop. And I saw the CD version of this, and I looked at the tracks on the back, and I thought, this is fantastic. It's got nearly all the songs from Back in Memphis and From Elvis in Memphis, and of course the singles, the 4 big hit singles from the American Sound Studio sessions. So I bought that. So this CD was actually my introduction to Elvis on CD. But the reason why I say it's important is because this is it's kind of a remix album, isn't it? There's a lot of different mixes on this CD. 1 or 2 of them I don't like as much as the originals, but you can certainly tell that the mixes are different to the originals. Again, so that's something now that it's become a sales point, hasn't it? For instance, the recent Sunset Boulevard set with the Matt Ross Bang remixes is something that the record company now uses to sell the music all over again. But I think at the time, this was quite a unique release because of those remixes. The next important release I have is from the following year, 1988. And this is an album that also caused quite a stir at the time because of the sound quality. I'm talking about this one here, Essential Elvis Volume 2, aka Stereo 57. And the reason why this one was such a big album at the time is because, well, Stereo 57, it seems like a contradiction in terms, doesn't it? Elvis wasn't making stereo records in 57. These are actually binaural recordings. And to be honest, when I first heard the original album, I struggled with it. People were saying that it's like Elvis is in the room with you. And I think I agree with that, but it was like too raw. It was too unpolished, too warts and all. It just didn't have that, like I said, polished sound of a good mono mix. But now I absolutely love them. It's difficult to say now. Do I prefer these mixes or do I prefer the mono versions? I'm not sure. But this is actually not the original album. It's on the Analog Productions label. It's 45 RPM 2LP version. And so this label is known for making really good, high quality pressings. Now they've only made about 5 different Elvis albums, a compilation called 24 Karat Hits, and Elvis is Back. And I don't think it's any coincidence that they've chosen this because these are really historic recordings, 2-track recordings from 1957. Since then, of course, we've also had, for instance, the Jailhouse Rock soundtrack released in binaural. Those last 2 albums that we looked at, they were released not only on LP but CD as well. And certainly by the late 1980s, I think most people were buying CDs. That's around about the time when I started buying them. These days, a CD box set is nothing new, but in the early 1990s, this was a pretty important release, I think. Collector's Gold. This one happens to be the LP box set, but the CD was also released in a 12 by 12 inch box set. And just like the Elvis and Presley box set showed that there was a market for a big bunch of unreleased Elvis stuff on LP, so this set too showed RCA, or was it BMG by that point? Yeah, BMG, that there was a market for multi-disc CD sets as well. And this one was aimed more at the collector than the general public, as each disc has its own theme. The first one, Hollywood, covering studio outtakes. The second one, Nashville, covering well, studio recordings made in Nashville. And the third one, Las Vegas, which is a 1969 concert. I believe all this was unreleased at the time. I think it's all available on other releases now. But at the time, it was a really good good release and a clever little idea to give each disc a different place name for the theme. I think the late 70s was a golden era for bootleg LPs, and probably the 1990s was the golden age for bootleg CDs. And it was certainly that prompted the formation of the Follow That Dream label in 1999. So as we've seen, RCA and then BMG, they were turning out the occasional release to satisfy collectors. But with Follow That Dream, they set up a label purely for Elvis collectors, which is really quite a bold move at the time. And the first release that they brought out was Burbank 68 in 1999. I don't have a physical copy of that, so I'll just show you what it says about it in this book here. So it contains one of the dressing room rehearsals from June the 25th. And it's also got a few songs from a couple of the stand-up shows, mainly the 8 p.m. show on June 29. And then it's got a few outtakes from the production numbers from the show itself. And the early FTD releases like that one, they were pretty cheap looking things, really. I've got an example here to show you. This is the kind of release that they were bringing out at the time, little 5-inch CD digipack covers, no frills whatsoever, but it was all unreleased music, at least officially unreleased. If you think about it, if those first few FTD releases had flopped, who knows where we'd be today. The label is, well, it's still thriving today. They've released over 200, well over 200 Elvis releases since 1999. You know, I mean, had that label folded after a couple of years, you know, I would have probably had, well, no, I wouldn't have bought them all, but, you know, the only selections out there could have been tons and tons of greatest hits that nobody really needs. The next choice, I think, is probably going to be a little bit controversial. Early in the 21st century, Elvis had a rare hit single, a remix of a very old song, A Little Less Conversation, and it went to #1 here, there and everywhere. And so BMG stuck it on a compilation, a brand new greatest hits compilation called 30 number one hits. Although, of course, with a little less conversation, that made 31 number one hits. And this is my LP version of it. I don't play it very often, to be honest, but the reason why I say it's an important album is because I think it introduced a new generation of fans to Elvis's music. And I think we need that every now and again. Some new Elvis release that really captures the public imagination. So, for instance, we had that Baz Luhrmann movie 2-3 years ago, and I think that did, something similar to what this album here did. Introduce a whole new generation of people to Elvis's music. So yeah, I definitely think this one is an important release. The next choice on my list is this album here, Elvis at Sun. You can get it on CD as well, much easier to find than it is on LP. This one came out in 2004, and this one just blew me away when I first heard it. And I think the reason why I choose this one is because it's really from around about this point that people started taking notice of who was mastering records. This one, for example, says audio restoration and mastering, Cavan Budd. And it's just incredible what he's managed to do. I mean, these are mono recordings when you think about it. And if you compare this to the old Sun collection and the double LP that came out, is it the Complete Sun recordings, Complete Sun sessions? There's just no competition. This one's way better, as I think I explained in a video I did a couple of years ago. If you prefer your Sun records to be hits first, other songs later, then you might prefer A Boy from Tupelo, which is also a really good LP. So yeah, I think it's around about this time that people started talking about, started to pay attention to who was actually mastering the music. I think with things like the 30 number one hits and the Baz Luhrmann movie, the Elvis movie, introducing more people to Elvis's music, it's only natural that people start wondering, well, what should I buy? What albums should I buy? And because CDs are cheap now, it was inevitable that at some point Sony would end up shoving all of Elvis's albums in a box. And that's exactly what they did with this release here behind me, which is my next choice of essential release. Absolutely incredible sounding album, 2016. So again, the music has been remastered and so on. And it's hard to believe they've got 60 CDs and a hardback book in there. The only minor gripe I have with that set is the quality of the covers. The actual card covers themselves is not as good as the original Japanese mini LP CDs. But then the Japanese had been making mini LP CD covers since the mid-90s, but it's only a minor gripe. Now, a box set which contains pretty much everything that was released during Elvis's lifetime is one thing, but for us crazy collectors, we need more than that. We actually want everything that was actually recorded. And finally, in 2018, Follow That Dream started to cater for maniacs like us, and they released the very first in the Sessions series. This was the Viva Las Vegas Sessions. Now, I know that this is probably not one of the more popular ones because of the way they chose to sequence the songs. They're not all in chronological order. But still, this was an incredible release when it came out. All of the ones that have been released since then, of course, they've got it right, and they've put all the songs in the correct order and the takes in the correct sequence. So I suppose this is the logical conclusion, really, of everything that's been happening over the last 48 years. So partly down to technological innovations, but largely down to the continued interest in Elvis's music, the official releases over the past 48 years have gone from strength to strength. I mean, if you think about one of the first albums I showed there, the Our Memories of Elvis series, which is basically a stripped down album. You compare that with the Sessions box sets, which present every single take with no overdubs. We've really come a long way in those 48 years. So what do you think? Have I missed any important releases out? I'm sure I have. We all have different opinions on these things. Let me know the important releases that you would choose. Now remember, it's not your favorites, it's the important ones. I mean, you could make a case for these MRS CDs behind me here, which were, I think most of those, if not all of them, were produced using digitally extracted stereo. You could argue that that's an innovation that's really important. I'm not going to say anything about AI. I'm just going to leave it there for this video, and yeah, please send me a just leave me a comment. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Thanks.